The diplomatic hall of the Galactic Council stretched 300 meters in every direction, its ceiling lost somewhere in the artificial atmosphere above. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, each zone carefully calibrated to their environmental needs. The delegation breathed methane through ornate masks. The floated in their water-filled observation spheres. The Kree clicked and chittered in their nitrogen-rich enclosure. At the center of it all, looking impossibly small and out of place, sat Ambassador Sarah of Earth. She wore a simple black suit, no environmental equipment, no special accommodations beyond a standard seat and a translator device clipped to her collar. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her hands rested calmly on the data pad in front of her. To most of the assembled delegates, she looked fragile, breakable, like she might shatter if someone spoke too loudly. Commander Vex of the Empire certainly thought so. He had been studying the human for the past 3 standard hours as the Council debated whether to grant Earth provisional membership. His species had conquered 17 star systems through military might. He understood strength, and this creature before him possessed none of the markers he recognized. The human presents interesting biochemistry, Speaker was saying, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. However, their technological development remains approximately 400 cycles behind standard Council requirements. Their faster-than-light capabilities are borrowed, not innovated. Their weapons systems are crude. Their population is confined to a single planet. Sarah listened without expression. She had heard variations of this speech every day for the past week. The Galactic Council had accepted Earth's application for membership 3 months ago, triggered an investigation, and now debated whether humanity deserved even provisional status. Furthermore, continued, preliminary surveys indicate humans lack significant physical capabilities. They possess no natural armor, no enhanced sensory organs, no specialized adaptations for survival. They are, by all measurements, one of the more vulnerable species we have encountered. A ripple of agreement passed through the chamber. The representative burbled something that the translators rendered as soft-bodied and weak-minded. They would contribute nothing to our collective strength. Sarah shifted slightly in her seat. The movement was small, but Vex noticed. He saw the tightness around her eyes, the way her jaw set just a fraction harder. Interesting. The human had emotions after all. "If I may address the Council," Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly despite her lack of vocal amplification. The translator hummed, converting her words into 47 languages simultaneously. Crystalline plates rotated with what might have been annoyance. "The human delegation may speak." Sarah stood, and Vex was struck again by how small she was. The top of her head would barely reach his lower chest plate. She probably massed less than a quarter of his weight. She looked like something that could be broken accidentally. "I've listened carefully to the Council's concerns over the past week," Sarah began. "You're right that we're technologically behind. We've only had FTL capability for 15 years, and yes, we got it from the trade agreement. You're also right that we're confined to one planet, though we have colonies on 3 moons and 2 other planets in our system." She paused, looking around the chamber. "But I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about what humanity can contribute to this Council. You've been measuring us by your own standards of strength, and by those standards, we do seem weak. But strength comes in many forms." "Physical weakness is physical weakness," rumbled the ambassador, a creature that looked like a mobile mountain. "Words do not change biology." "True," Sarah acknowledged. "But let me tell you something about my species. 3,000 years ago, we were scattered tribes fighting for survival on a planet that actively tried to kill us. We had no claws, no armor, no venom. We couldn't fly, couldn't breathe underwater, couldn't survive temperature extremes. We were prey for countless predators, each one more physically powerful than us." She started walking slowly around the speaking platform, and despite himself, Vex found his attention locked on her. "So we adapted, not our bodies, but our minds. We learned to work together, we made tools, we discovered fire and used it to reshape our environment. We domesticated other species to work for us. We didn't just survive on Earth, we conquered it, not through physical strength, but through persistence and innovation." "Ancient history," interrupted, "irrelevant to current capabilities." Sarah smiled, and there was something in that expression that made Vex's combat instincts stir. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Is it? Let me share some recent history then. 50 years ago, my planet fought something you might find familiar. A global war. The deadliest conflict in our history. We lost over 70 million people. The chamber stirred. 70 million was a respectable casualty count, even by galactic standards. The war lasted 6 years, Sarah continued. It involved every major nation on our planet. We developed weapons that could level cities in seconds. We fought in every environment Earth had to offer: frozen tundras, burning deserts, deep oceans, and high mountains. We fought through disease, starvation, and resource scarcity. And when it was over, we didn't destroy ourselves. We rebuilt. We grew stronger. Many species have wars, the representative bubbled dismissively. This proves nothing except that you kill each other efficiently. You're missing the point, Sarah said, and her voice had an edge now. The point is what happened next. We took the most destructive technology we'd ever created, technology that could crack our planet open, and we didn't use it to conquer each other. We didn't descend into endless warfare. We chose to regulate it, control it. We pointed all that destructive capacity outward and used it for peaceful purposes. We split atoms to power cities, not destroy them. She pulled out her data pad and projected a hologram into the center of the chamber. This is the Voyager one. We launched it 248 years ago, before we had FTL, before we even knew other intelligent species existed. It's a simple probe, powered by radioactive decay, carrying a message to anyone who might find it. Information about our species, our location, our culture. Music, greetings in 55 languages, images of our planet. The hologram rotated slowly, showing the ancient spacecraft. We threw a message in a bottle into an ocean we couldn't even see the other side of, Sarah said quietly. We reached out to the universe with nothing but hope and curiosity. We didn't know if anyone was out there. We didn't know if they'd be friendly, but we reached out anyway. Foolishness, Commander Vex found himself saying. You could have drawn predators to your world. Sarah turned to look at him directly, and Vex felt a strange sensation. The human's eyes were calculating, measuring. We considered that risk. We decided the possibility of making contact was worth it. That's who we are. We take calculated risks. We don't let fear of what might be stop us from discovering what could be. His plates shifted impatiently. This is all very philosophical, Ambassador, but it doesn't address the practical concerns. Your species lacks the physical capabilities to contribute meaningfully to Council operations. In the event of crisis, you would be a liability, not an asset. Would we? Sarah asked. She tapped her data pad again, and a new image appeared. A human in some kind of protective suit, working in what looked like extreme conditions. This is Dr. James Martinez. He's working on Kelvin Station, studying extremophile organisms. The station orbits a neutron star. Radiation levels that would kill most Council species in minutes, even with shielding. Dr. Martinez has been there for 3 years. Another image, a human woman climbing what looked like a sheer ice cliff. She climbed the highest mountain on Earth without supplemental oxygen at -40 degrees, for fun. She did it because it was there and she wanted to see if she could. More images flashed by. Humans in spacesuits, humans diving into deep oceans, humans working in burning deserts and frozen wastelands. We don't have natural adaptations, Sarah said, so we build them. We create technology to let us go anywhere, survive anything. We've walked on our moon, sent probes to every planet in our system, and now we're reaching for the stars. Not because it's easy, but because it's hard. The ambassador rumbled skeptically. Technology is not strength. Remove your tools and you are helpless. Remove your claws and you're helpless, Sarah shot back. Remove the armor plating and they're vulnerable. Take away the swatter and they die. Every species has dependencies. The difference is we acknowledge ours and plan for them. She took a breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was calmer. Look, I understand your skepticism. On paper, humans look weak. We're not the strongest, fastest, or toughest, but we're survivors, we're adapters, we're problem solvers, and maybe that's exactly what this Council needs. Explain, commanded. The Council has existed for 12,000 cycles, Sarah said. In that time, how many new species have joined? 47. How many have left? 12. How many have gone extinct? 5. The galaxy is getting more dangerous, not less. The Void Collective is expanding. Resource conflicts are increasing. And from what I've read in the historical records, the Council's response to these challenges has been traditional. She paused, letting that word hang in the air. You meet threats with military might. You solve problems with established procedures. You rely on the same tactics that worked 12,000 cycles ago, and they're working less and less effectively. Vex felt his combat instincts sharpen. The human was being dangerously critical. She was either very brave or very stupid. Humanity offers something different, Sarah continued. We offer adaptability, innovation, a completely fresh perspective on problems you've been trying to solve the same way for. We won't be the strongest warriors or the scientists, but we'll be the ones who think of solutions no one else has considered. Bold words said, but words are not proof. Then test us, Sarah said simply. Give us a problem, any problem, something the Council has been struggling with. Let us show you what human ingenuity can do. The chamber erupted in chittering, rumbling, and bubbling as delegates conferred with each other. Vex watched the human carefully. She stood calmly in the center of the chaos, seemingly unbothered by the fact that she'd just challenged the entire Galactic Council. Finally raised one crystalline appendage for silence. Very well, Ambassador, we will test your claims. The Council has been attempting to establish meaningful communication with the collective intelligence of Sigma-7 for approximately 600 cycles. This intelligence is silicon-based, exists in a quantum state, and operates on principles we do not fully understand. Every attempt at communication has failed. You want us to make first contact with an alien intelligence, Sarah said slowly. If your species is as adaptable and innovative as you claim, this should be well within your capabilities, said, and there was definitely challenge in his voice now. You have 30 standard days. Succeed, and we will grant provisional membership. Fail, and Earth's application will be rejected for the next 500 cycles. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled again, that same smile that had triggered Vex's combat instincts. We accept, she said. The session ended shortly after. As the delegates filed out, Vex found himself moving toward the human delegation section. He wasn't sure why. Curiosity, perhaps. Or maybe he wanted to see the expression on the human's face now that she was out of the spotlight. Sarah was gathering her things, moving with efficient, practiced motions. Her hands were steady. That was either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish, Vex said as he approached. She looked up at him, and he was struck again by how small she was. The top of her head barely reached his mid-torso. Probably both, she admitted, but humanity didn't get where we are by playing it safe. You realize what you've committed to, Vex said. The Sigma-7 intelligence has baffled some of the greatest minds in the galaxy. What makes you think your primitive species can succeed where we have failed? To his surprise, Sarah laughed. It was a genuine sound, free of mockery. That's exactly why we might succeed. We're not constrained by 12,000 cycles of established thinking. We don't know what's supposed to be impossible. Sometimes ignorance is an advantage. Or a fatal flaw. Maybe, Sarah agreed. She finished packing her data pad and looked up at him. Can I ask you something, Commander? Vex's translator caught the shift in her tone. She was moving into dangerous territory. You may ask. Why did you conquer 17 star systems? The question caught him off guard. To expand the empire, to acquire resources, to spread our influence. And how many of those systems actually wanted to be conquered? Want is irrelevant. We took them because we were strong enough to do so. Sarah nodded slowly. And how's that working out? I've read the reports. 3 of those systems are in active rebellion. 4 more require constant military presence to maintain order. You're spending enormous resources holding territory that doesn't want you there. Vex felt his armor plates bristle. You dare criticize military doctrine? I'm not criticizing, Sarah said calmly. I'm observing. You conquered through strength, but you haven't figured out how to rule through anything except continued application of that strength. It's exhausting, isn't it? Maintaining control through force alone. She was right, and that made Vex angry. The military spent half its budget simply maintaining order in conquered territories. What would you suggest, human? That we simply allow rebellion? I'd suggest you try something different, Sarah said. Find out what those systems actually need. Offer them something they want. Make them want to be part of your empire instead of forcing them. It's not about being weaker, it's about being smarter. You speak of concepts my species does not understand, Vex said. Then maybe, Sarah said quietly, that's what humanity can teach you. She picked up her bag and walked toward the exit. Vex watched her go, this small, fragile creature that had somehow challenged the entire Galactic Council and walked away with her head high. His second-in-command lieutenant approached. Sir, why were you speaking with the human? I'm not certain, Vex admitted. He was still watching the doorway Sarah had disappeared through. But I suspect we may have underestimated them. They're weak, sir, physically inferior in every measurable way. Perhaps, Vex said, but I've fought many battles. I've learned that the most dangerous enemies aren't always the strongest. Sometimes they're the ones who fight in ways you don't expect. 30 days. The human had 30 days to accomplish what the collective intelligence of the Galactic Council couldn't achieve in 600 cycles. Vex found himself hoping she would succeed, though he couldn't quite articulate why. Perhaps because the Council had grown comfortable in its established ways. Perhaps because he was curious to see what these strange, fragile, persistent creatures might accomplish. Or perhaps because the human had been right about something else too. The galaxy was changing. The old ways weren't working as well as they once had. Maybe it was time to try something different. Sarah sat in her quarters aboard the human research vessel Determination, staring at the data scrolling across her screens. 24 hours had passed since she'd accepted the Council's challenge, and she was beginning to understand why 600 cycles hadn't been enough time. The Sigma-7 intelligence wasn't just alien. It was fundamentally different from anything humanity had encountered. It existed in a state of quantum superposition, simultaneously occupying multiple probability states. It communicated, if you could call it that, through manipulation of electromagnetic fields in frequencies that most species couldn't even detect. "Coffee," said a voice behind her. Sarah turned to find Dr. Robert, her chief scientific advisor, holding 2 steaming mugs. He was a tall man with graying hair and laugh lines around his eyes, though he wasn't laughing now. "You're still at it," he observed, handing her a mug. "Can't stop thinking about the problem," Sarah admitted. She took a sip. The coffee was terrible, synthesized from recycled ship water and protein compounds, but it was hot and caffeinated. "We're missing something fundamental, Robert. The Council has been trying to communicate with Sigma-7 using standard protocols. Mathematical sequences, symbolic logic, even emotional resonance patterns. Nothing works." "Maybe nothing is supposed to work," Robert suggested. He pulled up a chair and sat beside her. "What if Sigma-7 doesn't communicate the way we understand communication?" "Everything communicates somehow," Sarah said. "Information has to flow, otherwise there's no intelligence, just random noise. But information can flow in ways we haven't imagined." Robert pulled up his own data pad and started sketching. "Think about humans before language. We communicated through gesture, expression, action. Then we developed spoken language, then written language, then digital communication. Each step was a revolution in how we transferred information." "You're saying Sigma-7 represents another revolution," Sarah said slowly. "I'm saying maybe they're so far beyond our level of communication that we're like ants trying to understand. We can detect it exists, but we fundamentally lack the framework to comprehend it." Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she smiled. "You know what ants do when they encounter something they don't understand?" "What?" "They poke it repeatedly, from every angle, until they figure out what it does." Robert laughed. "So your plan is to annoy an ancient quantum intelligence into responding?" "My plan," Sarah said, "is to approach this like a human would. Stop trying to be sophisticated and start being persistent. The Council has been attempting elegant, complex communication protocols. What if we start simple?" "How simple are we talking?" "Binary simple. On-off, yes-no. The most basic form of information transfer there is." Robert looked skeptical. "You think something as advanced as Sigma-7 will respond to binary?" "I think," Sarah said carefully, "that binary is universal. It's the foundation of all complex communication systems. Even quantum computers ultimately resolve to binary states when you observe them. Maybe we've been trying to start at the top of the ladder instead of the bottom." "The Council isn't going to like it," Robert warned. "It'll look primitive, unsophisticated." "The Council has had 600 cycles to be sophisticated," Sarah said. "Let's try being human instead." The next morning, Sarah presented her plan to the assembled human team. 20 scientists, engineers, and linguists sat around the conference table of the Determination, listening as she outlined her approach. "We're going to send a pulse," she said. "A simple electromagnetic pulse in a frequency we know Sigma-7 can detect. On-off, 1-0. Then we wait for a response." "That's it?" asked Doctor, the team's physicist. That's your revolutionary approach, a pulse. That's the start, Sarah said. If Sigma-7 responds, we'll know it can perceive deliberate signals. Then we build from there, establish a rhythm, create patterns, gradually increase complexity until we find a level it responds to consistently. And if it doesn't respond at all? Asked Lieutenant Williams, their military liaison. Then we try a different frequency, a different pattern, a different approach. We iterate until something works. Looked unconvinced. The council species have already tried thousands of approaches. No, Sarah corrected. They've tried thousands of sophisticated approaches. They've been trying to communicate like advanced civilizations. We're going to communicate like humans learning a new language. Point and grunt until something makes sense. The team spent the next 3 days preparing. They analyzed every failed communication attempt the council had made, looking for patterns in what didn't work. They built a transmission array capable of sending signals across multiple frequencies simultaneously. They developed protocols for recognizing responses, no matter how subtle. On the 4th day, they were ready. The determination took up position at the edge of the Sigma-7 construct, a region of space where reality seemed to fold in on itself. Sensors showed the quantum intelligence as a shimmer of probability, a ghost that might or might not be there depending on when you looked. Beginning transmission sequence, announced. Single pulse, frequency 774 MHz, duration 0.5 seconds. The ship's transmitters hummed. Energy pulsed out into space, washing over the quantum shimmer. Nothing happened. Wait 30 seconds, Sarah instructed. Then send another pulse, same parameters. They waited. The seconds ticked by with agonizing slowness. Sarah watched her screens, looking for any change, any flicker, any indication that Sigma-7 had noticed them. Nothing. Send the second pulse, she said. Again the transmitters hummed. Again nothing happened. This could take a while, Robert murmured. Then will take a while, Sarah said. They continued sending pulses every 30 seconds for the next 6 hours. The rest of the crew went about their duties, but Sarah remained at her station, watching, waiting, hopping. On the 217 pulse, something changed. Wait, said sharply. I'm reading a fluctuation in the quantum field, very subtle, but it's there. Sarah leaned forward. Can you isolate it? Working on it. Fingers flew across her console. There, it's a response pulse, same frequency we've been transmitting, but phase shifted by exactly 90 degrees. The room went very quiet. It responded, breathed. After 600 cycles of the council trying, it responded to us after 6 hours. Don't celebrate yet, Sarah warned, though her heart was racing. We need to confirm it wasn't random. Send another pulse, same parameters. Sent the pulse. This time the response came after only 15 seconds. Another pulse, phase shifted 90 degrees. It's learning, Robert said with wonder in his voice. It's understanding that we expect a response and adapting its timing. Okay, Sarah said, forcing herself to think clearly despite her excitement. We've established basic communication. Now we need to build on it. Send a sequence, 2 pulses 1 second apart. The sequence went out. They waited. Sigma-7 responded with 3 pulses, each separated by 1 second. It's playing with the pattern, said. We sent 2, it sent 3. It's showing us it can vary the response. Send 3, Sarah instructed. They sent 3. Sigma-7 responded with 5. It's doing mathematics, Robert realized. 2, 3, 5, prime numbers. It's showing us it understands mathematical concepts. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Then let's show it we understand too. Send the next 3 primes, 7, 11, 13. The sequence went out. The response took longer this time, almost a full minute. When it came, Sarah's smile grew wider. Sigma-7 had sent back the first 10 prime numbers in perfect sequence. We did it, said quietly. We made first contact. We started first contact, Sarah corrected. Now comes the hard part. We need to develop this into actual communication. Mathematical sequences are good, but we need to exchange more complex information. Over the next 2 weeks, the team worked around the clock. They developed a symbolic language based on mathematical relationships. They used prime numbers to represent concepts, sequences to indicate questions, and geometric ratios to convey spatial relationships. Slowly, painfully, They built a bridge between human understanding and whatever Sigma-7 was. The intelligence proved to be a fast learner. Once it grasped the basic framework of their communication system, it started elaborating on it, suggesting improvements, introducing new concepts. The language evolved rapidly, becoming more sophisticated with each exchange. On day 16, Sigma-7 sent a message that stopped everyone in their tracks. "It's asking about us," translated, staring at her screen. "It wants to know what we are, our nature, our composition." "How do we explain biology to a quantum intelligence?" wondered. Carefully, Sarah said. She thought for a moment, then started composing a response. "We describe ourselves in terms it can understand, carbon-based, operating on chemical reactions and electrical impulses. Finite, physical form, matter-based consciousness." She sent the message. The response came quickly. "Oh my God," Robert whispered, reading the translation. "It's sending us information about itself." The data that flooded in was staggering. Sigma-7 wasn't just an intelligence, it was a collective consciousness composed of trillions of quantum-entangled particles. It existed simultaneously across multiple probability states, experiencing reality not as a single timeline, but as a tree of infinite possibilities. It had no physical form in the way humans understood it. It simply was, spread across space-time like a living equation. "This is incredible," breathed. "It's sharing its fundamental nature with us. Do you know what the Council would pay for this information?" "Nothing," Sarah said quietly. "Because we're giving it to them for free. This isn't about profit, it's about connection." She composed another message. A question. "Why did you never respond to the Council's attempts at communication?" The answer, when it came, was simple and profound. "Not ready, needed to observe, needed to understand. You are different. You persist. You adapt. You do not demand, you ask. We respond to those who approach as equals, not those who approach as conquerors or supplicants." Sarah sat back in her chair, feeling the weight of those words. The Council had failed because they'd approached Sigma-7 with the wrong mindset. They'd either tried to assert dominance through their advanced technology or approached with scientific detachment, treating the intelligence as a specimen to be studied rather than an entity to be respected. Humanity, through simple persistence and genuine curiosity, had succeeded where they'd failed. "We need to report this to the Council," said. "Not yet," Sarah said. "We have 2 more weeks. Let's use them to establish a real dialogue. Sigma-7 has been alone for who knows how long. Let's show it what friendship looks like." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of communication. The team worked tirelessly, building understanding, asking questions, sharing information. Sigma-7 proved to be endlessly curious about humanity, particularly about concepts like emotion, mortality, and hope. These were alien ideas to an intelligence that existed in eternal quantum superposition, experiencing all possible outcomes simultaneously. In return, Sigma-7 taught them about its perspective. It showed them mathematical models of reality that made human quantum physics look like basic arithmetic. It explained how it perceived time not as a linear flow, but as a navigable dimension. It shared its loneliness, the weight of existing for millions of years with no one to talk to, nothing to do but observe the universe unfolding around it. On day 28, 2 days before the deadline, Commander Vex arrived on the Determination. Sarah met him in the docking bay, surprised to see the massive warrior boarding her small research vessel. "Commander," she greeted him, "I wasn't expecting Council observers until day 30. "I am not here as an observer," Vex said. His translator captured a tone Sarah was learning to recognize, uncertainty. "I am here to understand." "Understand what?" "How you succeeded. The Council has been monitoring your transmissions. We know you've established communication with Sigma-7. What we don't understand is how you managed it in less than 30 days when we failed for 600 cycles." Sarah considered her answer carefully. "Would you like to meet it? Sigma-7, I mean." Vex's armor plates shifted in what might have been surprise. "Meet it." "Come with me." She led him to the communication center, where the team was engaged in an active exchange with Sigma-7. Vex watched the streams of data flowing back and forth, the mathematical sequences that represented ideas and concepts. "This is remarkable," he admitted, "but it still doesn't explain your success." "The explanation is simple," Sarah said. "We asked nicely." Vex's plates shifted again, this time in clear confusion. You asked nicely. The council approached Sigma-7 like it was a problem to be solved or a territory to be claimed. They used sophisticated protocols, complex methodologies, advanced techniques. They tried to impress it with how smart they were. She pulled up a chair and gestured for Vex to do the same. To his credit, he managed to sit without crushing the human-sized furniture. We approached it like we were meeting a neighbor, Sarah continued. We started simple, we were patient, we listened. We didn't try to force it to communicate on our terms. We found a common ground and built from there. It's not about being sophisticated, Commander. It's about being genuine. Vex was silent for a long moment. The Council will not want to hear this, he said finally. It suggests our approach has been flawed for 600 cycles. Your approach has been flawed for 12,000 cycles, Sarah said gently. Not just with Sigma-7, with everything. You approach problems with the same mindset that worked in the past, even when the past keeps failing you. And you believe humanity has a better way. I believe humanity has a different way, Sarah corrected. We're not smarter than you, we're not stronger, but we're adaptable. When something doesn't work, we try something else. We don't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. Vex made a sound that the translator struggled with. It finally settled on contemplative rumble. You spoke before about my empire, about the rebellions. You suggested we try understanding rather than force. I did. I have been thinking about your words. We recently lost 50 soldiers attempting to suppress resistance in the system. 50 warriors died enforcing our will on a population that does not want us there. He paused. I find myself wondering if those deaths were necessary, if there was another way. Sarah felt a surge of sympathy for the massive warrior sitting beside her. There's always another way, Commander. The question is whether you're willing to try it. Before Vex could respond, called out from her station. Sarah, Sigma-7 is asking about it detected his biological signature when he boarded. Can you set up a direct translation? Sarah asked. Already working on it. A moment later, mathematical sequences began appearing on a screen in front of Vex. His translator hummed, converting the elegant equations into words. Greetings, Warrior Commander. You carry the weight of many deaths, those taken and those given. We sense conflict in your quantum probability, a branching of potential futures. Vex stared at the screen. It can sense my thoughts. Not thoughts exactly, Robert explained. Sigma-7 exists in quantum superposition. It perceives probability states. Your uncertainty about your path creates multiple probability branches in your future. It's reading those. Another message appeared. The human ambassador speaks truth. Force creates force. Strength used without wisdom creates weakness. We have observed this pattern across many species, many cycles. The strong empires fall, the wise ones adapt. Vex's armored hand clenched into a fist. I am a warrior. Strength is what I know. Wisdom is learned, not born. You seek understanding. This is first step. Question, what do the people want? Have you asked them? The simple question hit Vex like a physical blow. Sarah could see it in the way his armor plates shifted, the way his posture changed. No, he admitted. We did not ask. We assumed they would benefit from rule. Assumption creates error. Inquiry creates data. Suggestion, ask, listen, adapt. This is the human way. It is also the wise way. Sarah watched as the mighty commander sat in silence, processing Sigma-7's words. She saw something in his posture that she hadn't seen before, humility. I will consider this, Vex said finally. I will speak with my commanders, perhaps. Perhaps there is wisdom in the human approach after all. He stood, preparing to leave. At the docking bay entrance, he paused and turned back to Sarah. Ambassador, regardless of the Council's final decision, I want you to know that you have changed my mind about humanity. You are stronger than I believed. Not physically, but in ways that matter more. After he left, Robert came to stand beside Sarah. That was unexpected. Was it? Sarah smiled. We just showed a warrior that strength comes in many forms. Maybe that's the real test the Council was giving us. Not whether we could communicate with Sigma-7, but whether we could communicate with them. The final 2 days passed quickly. Sarah compiled her findings, prepared her presentation, and said a bittersweet goodbye to Sigma-7. The intelligence had become something like a friend over the past 30 days, and leaving felt like abandoning that friendship. Will you remember us? she asked in their final exchange. We exist in eternal now. All moments are simultaneous to us. We will always be experiencing this conversation, this connection. You have ended our loneliness across all time. We are grateful. On day 30, Sarah stood once again in the council chamber, but this time the atmosphere was different. Word had spread about humanity's success. The delegates watched her with new interest, new curiosity. His crystalline form reflected the chamber's light as he spoke. Ambassador, present your findings. Sarah activated her data pad, and a holographic display appeared above the speaking platform. 30 days ago, you challenged humanity to establish communication with the Sigma-7 intelligence. I'm pleased to report that we succeeded. Furthermore, we've developed a complete communication protocol that any Council species can use to interact with Sigma-7. We're sharing this freely with the Council. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. Sarah waited for it to die down before continuing. But the real discovery isn't the communication protocol. It's why previous attempts failed. She paused, looking around the chamber. Sigma-7 has been waiting for 600 cycles for someone to approach it as an equal, not as a problem to solve, not as a specimen to study, but as a conscious being deserving of respect and patience. She shared the recordings of their exchanges, the slow build from simple pulses to complex dialogue. She showed them Sigma-7's own explanations of why it had never responded before. The intelligence told us it was waiting for species that approached with genuine curiosity and respect rather than demands or clinical detachment. It was waiting for someone who understood that connection requires vulnerability, patience, and humility. Plates rotated slowly. You're suggesting the Council's approach was flawed. I'm suggesting, Sarah said carefully, that sometimes the most sophisticated solution isn't the right one. Sometimes you need to go back to basics, start simple, build trust, be patient. The representative burbled something that translated as, pretty words, but does this actually benefit the Council? Yes, Sarah said firmly, because Sigma-7 wants to join the Council. The chamber went silent. It wants what? Sounded genuinely shocked. Sigma-7 has been alone for millions of years, Sarah explained. It's observed the galaxy, watched civilizations rise and fall, but never participated. Now it wants to change that. It wants to share its knowledge, its perspective. It wants to be part of something larger than itself. She pulled up more data. The intelligence has already provided us with solutions to 3 major problems the Council has been struggling with. It's offered to help design more efficient FTL drives, suggested approaches to the resource conflicts in the outer reaches, and provided insights into the Void Collective's behavior patterns. Why would it do this? Commander Vex asked from his delegation section. Sarah turned to face him. Because that's what beings do when they connect. They help each other. They share. They build something together. Sigma-7 understands this instinctively. It's been waiting 600 cycles for the Council to understand it too. The debate that followed lasted 3 hours. Delegates argued, questioned, challenged. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. Earth was granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council. And Sigma-7 became the 48th species to join, the first non-biological intelligence to be accepted. Later, as Sarah prepared to return to Earth, Vex sought her out one final time. I spoke with my commanders, he told her. We're going to try your suggestion. We're going to ask what they want. Actually ask, actually listen. I hope it works, Sarah said sincerely. So do I, Vex paused. The Council is different now, Ambassador. You've changed how we think about strength, about communication, about solving problems. That recording of your first contact with Sigma-7, it's spreading through the entire Council. Everyone is watching how humanity approached the impossible and made it possible. Sarah felt a flutter of unease. The recording, I submitted that as part of my official report. Yes, Vex said, and it's become the most watched Council document in 12,000 cycles. Species across the galaxy are seeing how a small, physically weak race accomplished what the combined might of the Council could not. He leaned closer, his massive form casting a shadow over her. No one knew your strength, Ambassador, but now they do. The question is, what will humanity do with the galaxy watching? Sarah smiled. What we've always done, Commander. We'll keep asking questions, keep trying new things, keep building connections, keep being human. Then I suspect, Vex said, The galaxy is about to change in ways none of us can imagine. He was right, though neither of them knew just how right. The war recording that would change everything was still weeks away. But the foundation had been laid. Humanity had proven it didn't need physical strength to be powerful. Sometimes the strongest thing you could do was extend a hand in friendship. The message reached Earth on a quiet Tuesday morning. Ambassador was in her office in Geneva, reviewing trade proposals from the delegation, when her communication console lit up with an urgent priority flag. She opened the message and felt her blood run cold. "Sarah," Robert's voice came through, tight with stress. "You need to see this. The Void Collective just hit the Tarsi's colony. It's bad." Sarah pulled up the tactical display. The Tarsi system had been on the edge of Council space, a research outpost with minimal defenses. Population, approximately 40,000, representing 7 different species. Past tense, her mind whispered. The Void Collective didn't take prisoners. "When did it happen?" she asked, her voice steady despite the ice forming in her stomach. 6 hours ago. The Council is convening an emergency session in 3 hours. They're expecting Earth's representative there. "I'll be there," Sarah said. She closed the connection and sat for a moment, staring at the casualty reports scrolling across her screen. 40,000 lives, gone just like that. She'd been ambassador for 4 months now, and in that time she'd seen the Void Collective as numbers on reports, statistics in briefings. Now, for the first time, she was seeing the reality of what they did. The Void Collective was unlike any threat the galaxy had faced before. They weren't conquerors they weren't traders or explorers. They were something else entirely. A hive mind that consumed everything in its path, converting matter and energy into more of itself. They'd appeared at the edge of known space 700 cycles ago and had been slowly, inexorably expanding ever since. The Council's strategy had always been containment. Keep them boxed in, establish defensive lines, respond to incursions with overwhelming force. It had worked mostly. The Collective's expansion had slowed, but they'd never been stopped, never been pushed back, never been defeated. And now they'd just wiped out an entire colony in 6 hours. Sarah arrived at the Council chamber to find it in chaos. Delegates were arguing in multiple languages, their translators struggling to keep up. Some were calling for immediate retaliation. Others wanted to reinforce defensive positions. A few were suggesting abandoning the entire sector and falling back to more defensible lines. His crystalline form pulsed with angry red light as he tried to maintain order. "The tactical analysis is clear," he was saying. "The Collective used a new approach. They didn't come through standard FTL corridors. They appeared simultaneously at 3 points around the colony, suggesting they've developed some form of quantum tunneling technology." "Impossible," Commander Vex rumbled. "Quantum tunneling on that scale would require energy output equivalent to a supernova. Even the Collective doesn't have those resources." "And yet they did it," countered. "Which means our assumptions about their capabilities are obsolete. We need to revise our defensive strategies immediately." Sarah listened to the debate going in circles. The same arguments, the same proposed solutions, all based on the same fundamental approach: military force. Build bigger walls, station more ships, hit them harder. She thought about Sigma-7, about how 600 cycles of sophisticated attempts had failed, until humanity tried something simple. She thought about Vex and the rebellion, about how force had failed where understanding might succeed. Then she stood up. "Ambassador," acknowledged her. "Does Earth have input on this situation?" "Yes," Sarah said. "I have a question. Has anyone ever tried talking to them?" The chamber went silent. Then several delegates made sounds that translated as variations of laughter, though not the friendly kind. "Talk to the Collective." The ambassador's rumble was dismissive. "They are a hive mind. They have no individual consciousness. They don't negotiate. They don't communicate. They only consume." "How do you know?" Sarah pressed. "Has anyone actually tried?" "Ambassador," said, and his tone was patronizing in a way that made Sarah's jaw tighten. "The Collective has destroyed 17 colonies and killed over 2 million beings in the past 100 cycles. They have shown no interest in communication, no signs of intelligence beyond tactical coordination. They are not like Sigma-7. They are a plague, not a civilization." "But we don't actually know that," Sarah insisted. We've spent 700 cycles treating them as an enemy to be destroyed. What if they're also confused? What if they think we're the threat? What if they're defending themselves? The representative burbled something angry. Defending themselves, they attacked us. Did they? Sarah pulled up historical data on her pad. Look at the pattern of collective expansion. They don't raid, they don't steal resources, they convert them. To them, consuming matter might be no different than us breathing air. What if they don't even understand they're killing people? This is absurd, said flatly. The human delegation is letting emotional response cloud judgment. The collective is not a misunderstood neighbor. It is an existential threat. Sarah felt anger flash through her, but she kept her voice calm. 4 months ago, you all thought Sigma-7 was unreachable. You'd spent 600 cycles failing to communicate with it. Then humanity succeeded in 30 days because we tried a different approach. Why won't you let us try the same thing here? Because the stakes are too high, Vex said, and there was genuine concern in his voice. Ambassador, I respect what you accomplished with Sigma-7. I've implemented your suggestions and they're working better than I dared hope. But this is different. The collective is actively hostile. Sending a diplomatic mission would be suicide. Then don't send a mission, Sarah said. Send a signal, a message, something simple like we did with Sigma-7. If they don't respond, we've lost nothing. But if they do, we'll have shown them weakness, the ambassador growled. Predators attack weakness. And what if they're not predators? Sarah shot back. What if they're just different? What if they literally can't comprehend that we're intelligent beings because we're so alien to their experience? What if all we need to do is find a way to make them see us? Crystal form pulsed. The Council appreciates Earth's optimistic perspective, but we have 700 cycles of data on the collective. We know what they are. The military response will continue as planned. The session ended shortly after. Sarah gathered her things, feeling frustrated and helpless. She'd seen something in the data, a pattern that no one else seemed to notice or care about. The collective's expansion wasn't random. It followed energy gradients, moving toward areas of high stellar activity. What if they were drawn to energy the way plants turn toward sunlight? What if they literally couldn't perceive anything else? Back in her quarters, she pulled up every piece of data the Council had on the collective. She read reports, studied tactical analyses, watched recordings of battles. The more she learned, the more convinced she became that everyone was missing something fundamental. The collective didn't act like conquerors. They acted like a natural force. A forest fire didn't hate the trees it consumed. A flood didn't murder the towns it drowned. They just moved according to their nature. You're going to try anyway, aren't you? Robert said from the doorway. Sarah looked up. How did you know? Because I know you. You've got that look, the same look you had before you challenged the Council about Sigma-7. He came in and sat down. What's your plan? I don't have a plan, I have an idea. The collective responds to energy. Maybe that's their only language. What if we sent them a signal they could actually understand? Not words or mathematics, but pure energy patterns. A pulse that says we're here, we're intelligent, please notice us. And if they respond by destroying the transmission source? Then we use unmanned probes, remote stations. We don't risk lives. Sarah pulled up a star map. The next predicted collective incursion is in the Helios sector in about 2 weeks. If we position transmission stations in their path, we might be able to get their attention. The Council will never approve this. I know, Sarah said quietly. That's why I'm not going to ask permission. Robert was quiet for a long moment. You could lose your position. Earth could lose its council seat. I know that too, but 40,000 people just died, Robert. If there's even a chance we could prevent that from happening again, she trailed off. I have to try, it's the human thing to do. Robert sighed, but he was smiling. Then I suppose you'll need help. Who else are you bringing into this insane plan? Over the next week, Sarah quietly assembled a team. Doctor agreed to design the transmission arrays. Lieutenant Williams provided access to military resources, operating under the fiction that this was an authorized project. Robert handled the logistics. Even Sigma-7 helped, providing insights into quantum communication that might bridge the gap between biological and energy-based intelligence. They worked in secret, using backchannels and favors. Sarah knew she was burning through every bit of goodwill humanity had earned with the Council, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was important, that everyone was making a fundamental mistake about the collective. On day 8, Commander Vex showed up at her quarters unannounced. "I know what you're planning," he said without preamble. Sarah's heart sank. "Are you here to stop me?" "I'm here," Vex said slowly, "to tell you that the military has 3 unmanned probe stations in the Helios sector that are scheduled for decommissioning next week. Their access codes will experience a temporary glitch that will prevent remote shutdown. If someone were to use them for unauthorized communication experiments, it would take at least 48 hours before anyone noticed." Sarah stared at him. "You're helping us." "I'm not helping anyone," Vex said firmly. "I'm experiencing technical difficulties with my equipment. What you choose to do with that information is your concern." He paused at the door. "The negotiations are going well, by the way. We're drawing up a treaty that gives them genuine autonomy within the Empire. My commanders think I've gone soft. Maybe I have. Or maybe I've learned that strength sometimes means being willing to try a different approach." After he left, Sarah allowed herself a moment of hope. Maybe she wasn't as alone in this as she'd thought. They launched the operation on day 13. 3 transmission stations, positioned in the collective's projected path, each broadcasting a simple pattern, energy pulses that represented basic mathematical concepts, similar to what had worked with Sigma 7, but translated into pure energy fluctuations instead of electromagnetic signals. The stations began transmitting. Nothing happened. For 6 hours, the signals went out into empty space. The team monitored everything, watching for any change, any indication that the collective had noticed. "Maybe they're not coming through this vector after all," suggested. "The predictions could be wrong." Then the sensors lit up. "Contact," announced. "Collective signatures emerging from quantum space. Distance, 3 million kilometers and closing. Multiple entities, I count. Jesus, I count over 50 distinct signatures." Sarah watched the tactical display with her heart pounding. This was it. Either her theory was right and the collective would notice their signals, or she'd just led 50 collective entities straight to populated council space. "They're moving past Transmission Station 1, reported. "No change in trajectory, they don't seem to notice it." "Increase amplitude," Sarah ordered. "Make it brighter. If they follow energy, give them more energy." The power levels spiked. The station's signal increased by a factor of 10, then 20, pushing the equipment to its limits. "Station 1's going to burn out at this power level," warned. "Let it, we only need a few seconds." On the tactical display, one of the collective entities slowed, then another, then a third. "They're responding," Robert breathed. "They're actually responding." The collective entities that had noticed the signal began to converge on Station 1. But they weren't attacking. They were circling it, their movements almost curious, like animals investigating something unfamiliar. "Start the sequence," Sarah said. "Mathematical patterns, prime numbers first." The station began pulsing in patterns. 2 pulses, 3 pulses, 5 pulses, 7. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, impossibly, the collective entities began pulsing in response. Not in the same pattern, but in a pattern. 11 pulses, 13, 17. "They're continuing the sequence," whispered. "They understand its primes, they're showing us they understand." Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. 700 cycles, 700 cycles of warfare, and no one had thought to just talk to them. "Station 2, begin transmission," she ordered. Same pattern. The second station lit up. More collective entities diverted toward it. The pattern repeated. Humans sent mathematical signals. The collective responded with the next numbers in the sequence. "They're intelligent," said, and his voice was shaking. "All this time they've been intelligent and we've been killing them." "And they've been killing us," Robert added quietly. "This goes both ways, we both made assumptions." Sarah composed a new signal, this one more complex. She sent an image, translated into energy patterns, a symbol showing 2 different entities with a space between them. The universal symbol for separation, for boundaries. The response came faster this time. The collective entities pulsed with a pattern that, when analyzed, formed an image of their own, the same 2 entities but with a shared space between them. Not separation, connection. "They want to communicate," said. "They're not hostile, they're trying to understand us." Then Station 1 exploded. Not from the collective, from a weapons blast. On the tactical display, Sarah watched in horror as Council military ships dropped out of FTL, weapons hot. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Council fleet engaging collective entities, reported, his voice tight. Someone must have detected our signals and sent a military response. Sarah grabbed her communicator. This is Ambassador to Council Fleet. Cease fire immediately. The collective is attempting peaceful communication. I repeat, cease fire. But it was too late. The Council ships opened up with everything they had. The collective entities, caught by surprise, responded in kind. Energy weapons lit up space. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. Within minutes, all 50 collective entities were destroyed, along with stations 2 and 3. Sarah stood frozen, watching the tactical display clear. The engagement was over. The collective was gone. And with them went any chance of peace. The fallout was immediate and severe. Sarah was recalled to Earth within hours. The Council demanded explanations, reparations, and her immediate resignation. The recording of the engagement, showing Sarah's unauthorized contact attempt and the subsequent battle, spread through Council networks faster than she could track. She sat in a conference room on Earth, facing a panel of government officials and military commanders. They all looked angry. "Do you understand what you've done?" Admiral demanded. "You've potentially triggered a major collective offensive. Every analysis suggests they'll retaliate for those destroyed entities." "They were trying to communicate," Sarah said, her voice hoarse from hours of testimony. "They responded to our signals. They showed intelligence, curiosity, willingness to engage, and we killed them." "You don't know that," snapped. "You don't know what they were doing. You anthropomorphized an alien hive mind and nearly caused a diplomatic incident." "I saw the data, I saw the responses. They weren't attacking, they were learning." "Your speculation isn't evidence, Ambassador, and your unauthorized action has potentially endangered Earth's position in the Council. Some members are calling for our expulsion." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Has anyone watched the complete recording, not just the battle, but everything before it? The signals, the responses, the mathematical exchange?" "The recording is classified," said. "It's being analyzed by intelligence services." "Then Sarah said, "release it to the public. Let people see what actually happened before the shooting started. Let them decide whether the collective was hostile or curious." "Absolutely not. That would compromise military intelligence and inflame an already volatile situation." But Sarah had seen something in his expression, a flicker of doubt. Maybe he had watched the recording. Maybe he'd seen what she saw. "Admiral," she said quietly, 40,000 people died at Tarsize. We can either keep doing the same thing we've done for 700 cycles and watch that number grow, or we can try something different. Yes, my approach was unauthorized. Yes, I took risks. But for a few minutes we had actual communication with the collective. We had a chance at something other than endless war. Doesn't that matter?" Was quiet for a long moment. "You're relieved of your ambassadorship, effective immediately. You'll remain on Earth pending further investigation. That's final." Sarah nodded. She'd expected nothing less. What she didn't expect was what happened 3 days later. Someone leaked the recording. Not just to the Council, but to everyone. Every species, every planet, every station in Council space suddenly had access to the complete recording of Sarah's contact attempt. They could see the collective responding to mathematical patterns. They could see the entities slowing, circling, learning. They could see the moment of almost connection before the shooting started. And they could form their own conclusions. The response was overwhelming. Within hours, protests erupted across Council space. Citizens demanded answers. Why hadn't anyone tried this before? Why was the first response always violence? What if there was another way? The hashtag that emerged, translated across 48 languages, was simple: let them speak. Sarah watched the news feeds from her apartment in Geneva, stunned by the scope of what was happening. Species that had never agreed on anything were united in demanding the Council reconsider its approach to the collective. Even more surprising, military officers began speaking out. Veterans who'd fought the collective for cycles started questioning whether they'd been fighting an enemy or a misunderstanding. Scientists analyzed the recording and confirmed. The collective's responses showed clear signs of intelligence and communication. Sigma 7 released a public statement. "The recording shows what we have long suspected. Intelligence takes many forms. The collective may not think as you think, but they think. They deserve the chance to be understood." Commander Vex gave an interview that went viral across Council space. "I've spent my life as a warrior," he said. "I believed strength was about force, about domination, but a human taught me that real strength is having the courage to try peace when violence is easier. Ambassador took a risk that could have cost her everything. Maybe it's time we all took that risk." The pressure on the Council became unbearable. 5 days after the recording leaked, called an emergency session. Sarah watched it on a live feed since she was no longer permitted in the Council chamber. The crystalline speaker looked different somehow. Dimmer, like the weight of public opinion had literally worn him down. "The Council has reviewed the recording of the Helios incident extensively," announced. "While we maintain that Ambassador's actions were unauthorized and potentially dangerous, we acknowledge that the evidence shows possible collective intelligence and communication capability." He paused, and Sarah could almost feel him gathering the courage to say the next words. "Therefore, the Council has voted to authorize an official diplomatic mission to attempt communication with the Void Collective. This mission will be properly planned, properly equipped, and properly authorized. It will not be a military engagement. It will be a genuine attempt at first contact." The chamber erupted in approval from some delegates, protest from others. "Furthermore," continued, "the Council recognizes that humanity's unique perspective has value, even when expressed through unorthodox channels. Earth's Council membership is not only maintained but elevated to full status ahead of schedule." Sarah sat back in her chair, barely believing what she was hearing. "And finally," said, "the Council requests that Ambassador Sarah lead this diplomatic mission, if she's willing." Sarah's communicator buzzed. It was Admiral. "Congratulations, Ambassador," he said, and he actually sounded pleased. "You're officially reinstated, with a promotion. How does Chief Diplomatic Envoy for Collective Relations sound?" "It sounds," Sarah said slowly, "like humanity just changed the galaxy." "That recording changed the galaxy," corrected. "Everyone saw what you saw. They watched the collective respond with curiosity instead of hostility. They watched Council ships shoot first. And they asked themselves the same question you did: what if we've been wrong all along?" After the call ended, Sarah stood and walked to her window, looking out at the lights of Geneva. Somewhere out there, the Void Collective was still expanding, still consuming, still moving through space. But now, instead of just being a threat, they were a mystery, a puzzle, a potential friend or ally waiting to be understood. She thought about Vex learning that strength could mean choosing understanding over force. She thought about Sigma-7 waiting 600 cycles for someone to approach it with respect. She thought about how one simple question, "Has anyone tried talking to them?" had started a chain reaction that was reshaping galactic politics. The recording had changed everything, not because it showed human superiority or brilliance, but because it showed vulnerability. It showed someone trying something that might fail, risking everything on the hope that intelligence, no matter how alien, could find common ground. That was the real strength humanity brought to the galaxy, not weapons or technology or physical power, but the willingness to extend a hand even when it might be rejected, the courage to hope when cynicism was easier. Sarah picked up her communicator and sent a message to Robert and the rest of her team. "Get ready, we've got work to do. We're going to talk to the collective, for real this time, properly, and we're going to find out who they really are." Then she sent one more message to Vex. "Thank you for the technical difficulties with those probe stations. Turns out they changed everything." His response came quickly. "No, Ambassador, you changed everything. The stations just gave you the chance. The question is, what will you change next?" Sarah smiled. That was exactly the right question. The diplomatic vessel Persistence was unlike any ship the Council had ever commissioned. It carried no weapons, only the most advanced communication arrays ever designed. Its crew consisted of 50 individuals representing 12 species, all volunteers who understood they might not return. Sarah stood on the bridge, watching the stars slide past as they approached the edge of known space. In 3 days, they would reach the coordinates where collective entities had last been detected. Then the real work would begin. "Nervous?" Robert asked, coming to stand beside her. "Terrified," Sarah admitted. "What if I'm wrong? What if the Helios contact was a fluke? What if they really are just a mindless plague and I've convinced everyone otherwise?" "Then we'll find out and deal with it," Robert said calmly. But I don't think you're wrong. I've spent 3 months analyzing every piece of collective behavior we have on record. The patterns are there, Sarah. They're not random. There's intelligence behind their movements, their responses. We just never looked for it before because we were too busy shooting at them. Approached with a data pad. The transmission arrays are ready. We've incorporated Sigma 7's suggestions about quantum entanglement communication. If the collective operates on energy states like we think, this should be able to reach them across multiple dimensional frequencies simultaneously. "How's the crew holding up?" Sarah asked. Excited, scared, hopeful, the usual mix when you're making first contact with something that's been killing people for 700 cycles. Paused. "There's something you should know. We've been getting messages from all over Council space. Thousands of them, people wishing us luck, sharing theories, sending encouragement. That recording really did change everything." Sarah nodded. The Helios recording had sparked something across the galaxy, not just protests or political pressure, but genuine curiosity. People wanted to understand the collective. They wanted to know if peace was possible. Commander Vex had come aboard as military liaison, though his role was explicitly non-combat. He'd spent the past 2 weeks training the crew in meditation techniques, teaching them how to remain calm in the face of potential danger. The fierce warrior learning human diplomacy, now teaching humans how to think like warriors. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. On day 3, they reached the coordinates. "Sensors are clear," reported from the tactical station. "No collective signatures within scanning range." "Then we make some noise," Sarah said. She nodded to begin transmission sequence. The Persistence's arrays hummed to life, broadcasting across multiple frequencies. They started with the same mathematical patterns that had worked at Helios: prime numbers, sequences, geometric ratios. But they also added something new: music. It had been Sci's idea. If they respond to energy patterns, why not try one of humanity's most complex energy patterns? Music is mathematics made beautiful. It's pure pattern and variation. If anything will get their attention, it's this. So along with the mathematical signals, the Persistence broadcasts variations, translated into pure energy fluctuations. The complex interweaving patterns, the mathematical precision combined with emotional depth. If the collective could appreciate anything humans had created, maybe it would be this. For 6 hours, they broadcast into empty space. Then on the edge of sensor range, something appeared. "Contact," said quietly. "Single collective entity, distance 5 million kilometers, velocity. It's not moving, it's just sitting there." Sarah felt her heart rate spike. "Continue transmissions, don't change anything." They watched as the entity remained stationary, neither approaching nor fleeing. The minutes crawled by. Then it moved, not toward them or away, but in a circular pattern, a orbit like it was thinking. "It's listening," Robert breathed. "Look at the sensor readings. It's actively modulating its own energy field in response to our signals." "Can you translate the modulations?" Sarah asked. "Working on it." Fingers flew across her console. Wait, oh my God, Sarah, it's mimicking the music, not perfectly, but it's trying to recreate the patterns we're sending." On the main display, visualizations of the entity's energy output appeared alongside the variations they were broadcasting. The similarity was unmistakable. The collective entity was trying to learn their language. "Respond," Sarah ordered. "Send back a version, fewer variables, make it easier for them to copy." They broadcast a simple melody, just a few notes repeated in patterns. The entity's response came faster this time, closer to the original. It was learning exponentially quickly. "More entities incoming," reported. "I count 10, 15, 20. They're not approaching aggressively. They're maintaining distance but spreading out in a formation." "What kind of formation?" Vex asked, his warrior instincts alert. "Not military, it's concentric circles, like they're setting up to listen from multiple angles." "They're creating a better receiver array," realized. "Positioning themselves to pick up our signals from multiple vectors. That's not attack behavior, that's scientific inquiry." Sarah made a decision. "Open a channel, all frequencies. I'm going to try direct communication." "Sarah, we don't know if they'll understand," Robert warned. "Then I'll make it simple." She activated the transmission. "Collective entities, this is Sarah representing the Galactic Council. We come in peace. We want to understand you. We want to find a way for both our civilizations to coexist. We're sorry for the 700 cycles of conflict. We didn't understand. Please help us understand now. The transmission went out, her voice converted to energy patterns, mathematical sequences, and musical phrases all at once. The collective entities went still. Then, for the first time in recorded history, the Void Collective responded with something approximating language. It came as pure energy, but the ship's computers translated it into visual patterns, sounds, and data. What emerged was fragmentary, difficult to parse, but unmistakably communication. Alone, long alone, hunger, need. Stars warm, stars food, moving toward warmth. Not see you, not know you alive, not know you think, you energy, you food, you same as stars. The bridge went completely silent as the translation processed. They thought we were just energy, Robert whispered. All this time, they've been moving toward high-energy areas, consuming energy, not realizing there was intelligence behind that energy. We've been invisible to them. Sarah felt tears on her cheeks. 700 cycles of war, millions dead, all because of a fundamental failure to recognize each other as alive. Send a response, she said, her voice shaking. Tell them we understand. Tell them we're not food. We're people, thinking, feeling beings. Tell them we want to help them understand the difference. The conversation that followed lasted 14 hours. It was slow, halting, frustrating. The collective's method of perception was so alien that finding common ground seemed impossible. They experienced reality as fields of energy and probability. They had no concept of individual identity, existing instead as a distributed consciousness across countless entities. Time, space, even causality worked differently for them. But gradually, painfully, understanding emerged. The collective had been alone for billions of years, drifting through space, consuming energy to sustain themselves. They'd encountered the Council species 700 cycles ago and saw them only as interesting energy patterns. Bright, complex, but ultimately just fuel. The concept that these energy patterns represented individual conscious beings was completely foreign to them. In their experience, consciousness was collective, distributed, eternal. The idea of discrete minds, each one separate and finite, was almost incomprehensible. It's like trying to explain color to someone who's only ever seen in grayscale, said during a break in the communication. They literally lack the conceptual framework to understand individual consciousness. Then we teach them, Sarah said. We show them what individuality means, what mortality means, what it means to be a separate being who can choose, can hope, can fear. They spent the next week in intensive communication. Sarah introduced them to the concept of names, of individual identity. She told them about human life, birth, childhood, learning, growing, aging, death. She explained that when the collective consumed energy patterns, they were ending unique, irreplaceable consciousnesses. The collective's response, when they finally grasped the concept, was devastating. Done harm not know, cannot undo. Individual lives ended, cannot restore. Horror, error, how stop, how prevent future harm. You can learn to recognize us, Sarah explained. Develop a way to distinguish between natural energy sources and conscious beings. We'll help you. We'll teach you how to identify our energy signatures, our patterns of consciousness. Must return, must restore, must apologize, concept new, feeling new, collective never wrong before, always alone, no one to be wrong to, now wrong, now harmed others, how fix. Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. They were all watching her, waiting for guidance on this unprecedented moment. The collective wanted to make amends. They felt guilt or something like it. They wanted to repair the damage they'd done. You can't restore the dead, Sarah said gently. Neither can we. What's done is done, but you can help prevent future deaths. You can share your knowledge with us. You can teach us about your way of existing. You can help us understand the universe from your perspective. That would be a gift beyond measure. What followed was a cultural exchange, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The collective shared their understanding of quantum mechanics, energy manipulation, and dimensional physics. They taught the Council species how to perceive reality as fields of probability rather than fixed states. They revealed technologies that seemed like magic, ways to manipulate energy that made FTL travel look primitive. In return, the Council taught them about individuality, about societies, about art and culture, and all the things that emerged from discrete conscious minds working together. They introduced them to concepts like friendship, loyalty, sacrifice. Ideas that had no meaning to a distributed consciousness, but which fascinated the collective endlessly. The collective entity that had made first contact, which Sarah had started calling First Voice, for lack of a better term, became particularly interested in human culture. Humans small, it observed during one exchange. Energy output minimal, physical strength negligible, yet humans achieve much. Communicate with Sigma 7. Communicate with us. Stop 700 cycle conflict. How? What makes humans succeed when larger, stronger species fail? Sarah thought about that question carefully. We adapt. We try new things. We don't let our limitations stop us. We might be weak individually, but we're persistent, creative. We find ways around obstacles instead of trying to smash through them. Admirable, efficient. Collective understands efficiency, but efficiency alone not explain success. Something else, something. Hope. Yes, Sarah said, surprised by the entity's insight. Hope is a big part of it. Even when things look impossible, humans hope they might work anyway. Sometimes that hope makes us try things we shouldn't try. Sometimes we fail, but sometimes we succeed in ways no one expected. Hope irrational. Outcome probability not changed by hopping. Maybe not, but hope changes our behavior. It makes us try when logic says we should give up. It makes us reach out when wisdom says we should pull back. It's not always smart, but it's very human. Want to understand hope better? Want to learn this human quality? Perhaps collective too efficient. Perhaps efficiency miss important things. That conversation was recorded and broadcast across Council space. The image of an ancient energy being asking to learn about hope captured imaginations everywhere. The collective, once the most feared threat in the galaxy, was becoming fascinating, complex, worthy of study rather than destruction. But not everyone was happy about it. 3 weeks into the diplomatic mission, a message reached the Persistence. A faction within the Council, led by the ambassador and supported by several militant species, was demanding the mission end immediately. They claimed Sarah was being manipulated, that the collective's apparent change of heart was a trick to lower defenses. They're calling for a military strike, reported, his face grim. They've assembled a fleet, 200 ships led by dreadnoughts. They're moving toward our position. Sarah felt ice in her stomach. How long until they arrive? 60 hours, maybe less if they push their engines. She looked at the display showing the collective entities peacefully orbiting the Persistence, learning, sharing, growing. 23 entities now, all engaged in active communication. They'd made more progress in 3 weeks than 700 cycles of warfare had achieved. And a council fleet was coming to destroy it all. Get me a direct channel to the fleet, Commander, Sarah ordered. The channel opened, revealing a massive warrior whose scales gleamed like polished stone. This is Fleet Commander. Ambassador, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. We are engaging the collective threat. There is no threat, Sarah said firmly. We've established communication. We're making progress. You cannot attack now. You've been deceived. The collective cannot be trusted. They've killed millions. They must be destroyed. They killed millions because they didn't understand we were alive. They thought we were just energy patterns. They're learning now. They want peace. Your naivety is noted and dismissed. You have 59 hours to clear the area. Any vessels remaining will be considered hostile. The channel closed. Sarah stood frozen for a moment, her mind racing. Then she turned to, can we set up a direct connection with the collective, something faster than our current communication method? Maybe if we use quantum entanglement like Sigma 7 suggested, but it would require direct physical contact with their energy matrix. Anyone who makes that contact would be changed. We don't know how. Do it, Sarah said. Set it up, I'm making contact. Sarah, you can't, Robert protested. We don't know what that will do to you. I know exactly what it will do. It'll let me communicate with them properly, directly, without translation delays. That's what we need right now. She looked around at her crew. A fleet is coming to start the war all over again. I need to make the collective understand what that means. I need to convince them to leave, to hide, to survive until we can work this out politically. And I can't do that through 16 hours of back-and-forth translation. Vex stepped forward. Then I go with you. If the process is dangerous, you should not face it alone. Sarah shook her head. Commander, with respect, this needs to be a human. The collective trusts us specifically. They've been studying human culture. They need to see human courage, human commitment. This is what humanity does. We reach out even when it's dangerous. She walked to the airlock where the quantum entanglement device had been hastily assembled. It looked like a neural interface combined with a transmission array. cobbled together from parts that were never meant to work together. "This is insane," muttered. "Probably," Sarah agreed. She sat in the chair and let attach the neural interface leads. "But it's insanely human, which is what matters right now." The device activated. Sarah felt something, not pain exactly, but a sensation of expansion. Her consciousness was reaching out, touching something vast and ancient and utterly alien. It was like trying to merge with an ocean, overwhelming and terrifying and beautiful. Then she was there, inside the collective's shared awareness. She could feel billions of years of memory, experience stretching across countless star systems, knowledge that would take a human lifetime to process even a fraction of. She could sense the entity's curiosity, their newfound understanding, their confusion at these strange individual minds they'd discovered. And underneath it all, something she hadn't expected: fear. The collective was afraid. Afraid of what they'd done. Afraid of what might be done to them in return. Afraid of this new universe they'd discovered, where energy patterns were actually people, where actions had moral consequences, where you could be wrong about something fundamental. Sarah reached out with her consciousness, letting them feel her presence. "I'm here," she communicated, not with words, but with pure thought. "I'm Sarah, you know me, you've been learning from me. I need you to understand something important." The collective's attention focused on her like a spotlight. "Ambassador Sarah, why different contact? Why direct merge?" "Because a threat is coming, a fleet of warships. They're coming to attack you. They don't believe we've made peace. They think you're still the enemy." She felt the collective's confusion. But not enemy, learning, understanding, making amends. Why attack? Because fear is hard to overcome. Because 700 cycles of war doesn't end just because we say it's over. Because some people can't accept that you've changed. Must fight, must defend. No, Sarah pushed the thought out with all the force she could muster. If you fight, you prove them right. You prove that you're still the enemy. Everything we've built, all the understanding, all the progress, it ends. The war starts again. Then what do? Cannot let selves be destroyed. Collective has right to exist. You run, you hide, you survive. Let me handle the council. Let me prove that peace is possible. But I need time, and I need you to be alive to make that time matter. She felt the collective processing this. It was strange, feeling billions of years of thought patterns trying to grasp concepts like strategic retreat, political maneuvering, the difference between survival and victory. Not want to run, feel. Shame, new emotion, difficult, unpleasant, collective always strong, always moving forward, never retreat. That's pride talking, Sarah said gently. Pride is the thing that makes retreat feel like failure, but sometimes retreat is the move. The humans have a saying, he who fights and runs away lives to fight another day. Except you won't be fighting, you'll be living, you'll be surviving, you'll be proving that you value life enough to preserve your own. Life, yes, understand life now. Precious, irreplaceable, cannot end other lives to preserve ours, but also cannot end our life. Paradox, difficult choice. It's called a moral dilemma, Sarah explained. Individual beings face them all the time. Now you're facing one as a species. Welcome to being part of the larger community. It's complicated and messy, and there are no perfect answers. Ambassador Sarah, thank you for teaching, for patience, for hope. We'll retreat, we'll hide, we'll wait for human to convince other council species. But Ambassador Sarah, you still inside collective awareness. Separation may be difficult, may be painful, may change you. I know, Sarah said. I accept that risk. That's what hope means, doing the right thing even when you might pay a price. The disconnection process took hours. By the time Sarah came back to herself, she was exhausted, disoriented, and fundamentally altered. She could still feel echoes of the collective's presence in her mind. She suspected she always would. But it had worked. The collective entities were already moving away, disappearing into quantum space, leaving no trace for the incoming fleet to find. When Commander's fleet arrived, they found only the Persistence, alone in empty space. Where are they? Demanded. Where is the collective? Gone, Sarah said simply. They've withdrawn from this area. There's no one here to fight. You warned them. You betrayed the council. I saved lives, Sarah corrected. Both collective lives and council lives, because that fleet wouldn't have one commander. The collective could have destroyed you all, but they chose to leave instead. They chose peace. That's what I convinced them to do. This is unacceptable. The collective threat must be eliminated. Why? Sarah asked. Give me one good reason. They're not attacking anyone. They're not consuming council resources. They're learning to distinguish between natural energy sources and conscious beings. They're changing. Why does that terrify you so much? Its massive form seemed to vibrate with anger. Because they're different, because they're dangerous, because they cannot be trusted. You mean because they force you to question everything you thought you knew, Sarah said quietly. Because if the collective can change from enemy to potential ally, then maybe the universe is more complicated than you want it to be. Maybe violence isn't always the answer. Maybe there are threats that can't be solved with bigger guns. The transmission ended with furious face filling the screen. But Sarah had bought time, the collective was safe, the fleet had no target, and most importantly, the crew of the Persistence had recorded everything. The direct quantum contact, Sarah's conversation with the collective, their decision to retreat rather than fight. That recording would join the Helios recording as evidence that peace was possible, that the collective had changed, that understanding could triumph over fear. Sarah collapsed into her chair, feeling the weight of the past days settling on her. Her head ached from the neural connection. Her body felt strange, like it was slightly out of phase with reality. The quantum entanglement had changed her on a fundamental level. "Are you okay?" Robert asked, kneeling beside her chair. "I've been better," Sarah admitted. "But I'm alive, and more importantly, so is the collective. We bought them time." "We bought everyone time," Vex said. He looked different somehow, less warlike, more thoughtful. "Ambassador, what you did was, I don't have words for it. You literally merged your consciousness with the greatest threat the galaxy has known and convinced them to run away. You ended a battle without firing a shot." "I ended this battle," Sarah corrected. "The war isn't over, and his faction won't give up. They'll keep pushing for military action." "Then we keep pushing back," said. "We release this recording. We show the galaxy what you showed the collective, that there's another way, that understanding is possible." Nodded, the first recording changed the political landscape. This one will change it even more. You directly communicated with them, Sarah. You proved they're not monsters, they're just different. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling those quantum echoes still resonating in her mind. The collective's vast perspective, their billions of years of experience, their newfound understanding of individual consciousness. It would take her months, maybe years, to fully process what she'd experienced. But one thing was clear. She'd changed the galaxy again. Not through force or brilliant strategy, but through the simple human act of reaching out, even when it was dangerous, even when it might fail. That was humanity's real strength, not weapons or technology or physical power, but the willingness to extend a hand into the darkness and hope someone would take it. The recording would spread, people would see, and the galaxy would have to decide, would they choose fear and violence or would they choose understanding and hope? Sarah already knew what choice humanity would make. The question was whether the rest of the galaxy was ready to be that brave. The second recording hit the galactic network like a shockwave. Within hours, every screen, every data pad, every communication device across council space was showing the same images. Sarah, small and fragile-looking even by human standards, sitting in that crude chair, attaching neural interfaces to her head. Then the moment of contact, her body going rigid as her consciousness merged with something billions of years old and incomprehensibly vast. But what really captured attention was what came after. The translation of the conversation, the collective's fear and confusion, their desire to make amends, and most importantly, their decision to retreat rather than fight. Not because they were weak or defeated, but because a human had convinced them that preserving life, all life, mattered more than pride or territory or revenge. Sarah watched the news coverage from her apartment on Earth, still recovering from the neural connection. The quantum echoes in her mind had faded somewhat, but she could still feel them, like phantom memories of being something more than individual, something vast and distributed and eternal. Her door chimed. When she opened it, she found an unexpected visitor. Speaker, the Crystalline Council leader who had challenged her so many times. "Ambassador," he said, his plates refracting light in patterns she'd learned meant uncertainty. "May I enter?" Sarah stepped aside, curious. Had never visited Earth before, let alone her personal quarters. He settled into a reinforced chair, designed to handle his crystalline weight. For a long moment, he simply looked at her, his faceted form catching the afternoon sunlight and scattering it across the walls. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. Multiple apologies, actually, for dismissing your suggestions, for patronizing your approaches, for assuming that 12,000 cycles of council experience meant we knew better than a species that had barely entered space. Sarah sat across from him. You were working with the information you had, the established patterns. That's not wrong, it's just limited. It's arrogant, corrected. We became so confident in our methods that we stopped questioning them. We stopped asking, what if there's another way? You asked that question repeatedly, and we dismissed you every time, until you proved us wrong. Repeatedly. He shifted, and his plates caught the light differently. The council has been in emergency session for the past 72 hours. The debates have been intense. Fleet Commander's faction is demanding your arrest for treason. They want the Persistence crew tried as collaborators. They're calling for an escalation of military operations against the collective. I expected that, Sarah said quietly. But they're losing, continued. The recordings have shifted public opinion too far. Citizens across council space are demanding we pursue diplomatic solutions. They've seen you risk your life, risk your mind to find peace. They've seen the collective choose retreat over violence. They're asking why we can't make the same choice. And what does the council say? His plates shifted, and what Sarah had learned was embarrassment. The council is divided. Some, like Commander Vex, are advocating for complete policy reform. They want to apply your diplomatic methods to all our conflict zones. Others, see any deviation from military solutions as weakness. And many are simply confused. We've done things the same way for so long that change itself is frightening. He paused. But there's a growing faction, one I find myself part of, that believes you're right. Not just about the collective, but about everything. We've been approaching problems with the same mindset for 12,000 cycles. Maybe it's time for a new perspective. Sarah leaned forward. Speaker, what are you really here to ask me? I'm here to offer you a position. Chief Diplomatic Innovation Officer. You would have authority to attempt diplomatic solutions before military action is authorized. You would train others in your methods, and you would have a seat on the inner council with full voting rights. Sarah sat back, stunned. That's unprecedented. Earth has only been a member for months. And in those months, you've accomplished what the council couldn't in 700 cycles. You've made first contact with 2 species we thought were impossible to reach. You've proven that there are alternatives to violence. You've changed how billions of beings across the galaxy think about conflict resolution. His plates shimmered. The question isn't whether Earth has earned this position. The question is whether you're willing to accept it. Before Sarah could answer, her communicator buzzed. It was marked urgent from on the Persistence. Excuse me a moment, she said then activated the call. What's wrong? The collective made contact again, directly with the ship. They're asking for you specifically. Sarah's heart rate spiked. What do they want? They say there's a crisis, something about the military faction. Sarah, their saying's fleet isn't just pursuing them, they're preparing to attack the collective's origin point. There, I guess you'd call it their home, where the majority of their consciousness exists. If that's destroyed, the entire collective might die. Sarah looked at who had clearly heard words. The crystalline being's plates had gone dark. I knew was aggressive, said quietly, but this is genocide. He can't have authorization for this. Maybe he doesn't need it, Sarah said. How long until he reaches the target? Collective says 18 hours, replied. They're asking if we can help. They don't want to fight. They'd rather die than start the war again, but Sarah, they're scared. I can feel it in their transmissions. They're actually scared. Sarah made her decision instantly. Tell them yes. Tell them we're coming. Tell them to gather as many entities as they can and prepare to evacuate if necessary. She turned to, I need the fastest ship you have, now. Ambassador, you can't seriously be planning to intervene in a military operation. I'm planning to prevent a genocide, Sarah corrected. Whether you help me or not is your choice. But I'm going. This is what humanity does. We don't abandon people who need help just because it's dangerous or complicated or might make us look bad. Was silent for a long moment, then his plates brightened. The Council ship Radiance is docked at Earth Station. It's the fastest vessel in the fleet. I'll give you access. But Ambassador, if you do this, there's no going back. You'll be directly opposing a Council military operation. You could lose everything. I already know what I'll lose if I do nothing, Sarah said. I'll lose the right to look at myself in a mirror. 3 hours later, Sarah was aboard the Radiance with a hastily assembled crew. Robert, and surprisingly, Commander Vex, who had insisted on coming. The Empire officially disapproves of this mission, Vex had said as he boarded. But Commander Vex personally believes it's necessary. Diplomatic immunity is a wonderful thing. The Radiance was fast, but not fast enough. Even at maximum speed, they wouldn't reach the Collective's origin point before fleet. They needed another option. What if we use the Collective's quantum tunneling? Suggested. If they could teach us how it works, we could get there instantly. That technology destroyed a station at Helios, pointed out. The energy requirements are astronomical. Not if we use the Collective itself as the power source, Sarah said slowly. An idea was forming, dangerous and brilliant and probably insane. What if I make contact again, merge with the Collective like I did before, use their quantum nature to transport this ship directly to their home? That could kill you, Robert said flatly. The first connection changed you fundamentally. A second one, especially one that's using you as a conduit for that much energy. Sarah, we don't know if your brain can handle it. We know the alternative, Sarah said. Millions of collective entities dead, a species exterminated, everything we've built destroyed. I'm not okay with that outcome. She was already moving toward the medical bay where they'd set up another neural interface. Get the Collective on the line. Tell them what I need. If they can do it, we're going. If not, we keep going the conventional way and hope we're not too late. The response came quickly. The Collective could do it. They would do it. But they confirmed what Robert had said. The process would change Sarah irreversibly. The quantum entanglement would become permanent. She would always be partially connected to the Collective consciousness, experiencing reality from their perspective as well as her own. She would never be entirely human again. Sarah sat in the medical chair, looking at the neural interface. This was it, the point of no return. She could still walk away, try to reach the origin point conventionally, hope they weren't too late. Or she could do the human thing, take the risk, pay the price, save the lives that needed saving. Do it, she said. The connection was different this time, deeper, more complete. Sarah felt herself dissolving into the Collective's shared awareness, but unlike before, she didn't lose herself. She remained Sarah, individual and discrete, but also became part of something vast. She existed in superposition, one consciousness and billions simultaneously. Through the Collective senses, she perceived the ship not as a physical object, but as a probability wave, a quantum state waiting to be collapsed. She reached out with her hybrid consciousness, human will combined with collective capability, and folded space. The radiance vanished from Earth space and reappeared instantly at the Collective's origin point, a region of space where reality itself seemed to shimmer with quantum uncertainty. And found themselves in the middle of a battle. Fleet had already arrived, 200 warships arrayed in attack formation. But they weren't firing yet. They were facing something that made even their massive dreadnoughts look small. The Collective's true form. Sarah had only ever seen individual entities, each one the size of a small moon. This was different. This was billions of entities merged into a single consciousness, a structure of pure energy that stretched across thousands of kilometers. It was beautiful and terrible, like watching a galaxy compressed into a single system, every star a thinking mind, every connection between them a thought. And it was completely vulnerable. The Collective could have destroyed Fleet with a thought, but they weren't fighting, they were just waiting. This is the Radiance to Fleet Commander, Sarah transmitted. Stand down immediately. His face appeared on screen, his scaled features twisted in fury. Ambassador, of course, come to save your friends? Step aside. This is a Council military operation. Unauthorized military operation, Sarah corrected. You have no approval for this action. You're acting on your own, and what you're planning is genocide. It's self-defense. The Collective is a threat. They've killed millions. They must be eliminated. They killed millions before they understood we were alive. They've learned. They've changed. And right now, they're choosing not to fight you even though they could destroy your entire fleet. Lies, manipulation. You've been compromised by contact with them. You can't be trusted. Sarah felt the Collective's presence in her mind, their fear and their determination. They were ready to die rather than start the war again. They'd rather cease to exist than prove humanity wrong about them. And suddenly, Sarah understood what she needed to do. Commander, she said calmly, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you what I experienced. The Collective's thoughts, their fears, their genuine desire for peace. And then you can make your decision. I don't need to see. Sarah didn't give him a choice. Through her quantum connection, she reached out and broadcast directly to every ship in its fleet, not words or images, but pure experience. She showed them what she'd felt when she merged with the collective, their billions of years of loneliness, their discovery that the energy patterns they'd been consuming were actually people, their horror at what they'd unknowingly done, their desperate desire to make amends. She showed them the collective's perspective of the battle at Helios, how the entities there had been curious, not aggressive, how they'd been learning, exploring, trying to understand these strange new beings that made music out of mathematics, how they'd died confused and afraid, not understanding why they were being attacked. She showed them the collective's fear right now, their knowledge that they could fight, could probably win, but their choice not to. Their trust that humanity, that Sarah specifically, would find another way. The transmission lasted only seconds, but it was enough. Sarah severed the connection and waited. Silence filled the comm channels. Then, one by one, ships in its fleet began powering down their weapons. "This is Captain of the Dreadnought Vengeance," a voice transmitted. "We're standing down, Fleet Commander, what we just experienced. That wasn't a threat. That was a conscious being asking for mercy. I won't be part of killing something that's begging not to fight." More voices joined in. Captain after captain, ship after ship, declaring they wouldn't participate in the attack. "Mutiny," roared. "This is mutiny. All ships, you are ordered to." "No," another voice cut in. It was Commander Vex, broadcasting from the Radiance. "Fleet Commander, your orders are illegal. This operation was never authorized by the Council. You're acting on personal vendetta, not military necessity. I'm invoking Protocol 7 Alpha. Any vessels in this fleet are ordered to return to home space immediately." A dozen of the largest ships in its fleet broke formation, following Vex's command. His face on the screen was apoplectic. "You're all cowards. The collective is manipulating you. Can't you see what they've done to the human? She's not even entirely organic anymore. She's been corrupted." "I've been changed," Sarah agreed calmly. "But not corrupted. I understand both sides now, Commander. I can see the universe from both perspectives, and what I see is two groups of conscious beings who've been killing each other out of misunderstanding. That's not a war that needs to continue. That's a tragedy that needs to end." She gestured to the massive collective structure behind the Radiance. "Look at them. Really look. They're not attacking. They're not threatening. They're waiting to see if we'll choose understanding over fear. The question isn't whether they can be trusted. The question is whether we're brave enough to trust." His fleet was breaking apart now. Ships were jumping to FTL, retreating, some even moving to defensive positions around the collective structure rather than aggressive ones. In minutes, only a handful of vessels remained with his most loyal followers. "This isn't over," transmitted. "The Council will hear about this. You betrayed everything we stand for." "No," Sarah said. "I betrayed what you stand for, endless war, solving every problem with violence, destroying what you don't understand. The Council, the real Council, stands for something better: cooperation, understanding, building a galaxy where different species, different forms of consciousness can coexist." His remaining ships jumped to FTL, fleeing rather than facing a fleet that had turned against him. The crisis was over. Sarah sagged in her chair, exhausted beyond measure. The quantum connection was still there, permanent now, just as the collective had warned. She could feel them celebrating, their relief and joy washing through her. They were safe. They were alive, and they'd proven to themselves that they could choose peace even when threatened. "Sarah," Robert said gently, kneeling beside her chair. "Are you okay?" "I'm different," Sarah said. "I can feel them all the time now. It's like having billions of roommates in my head. It's overwhelming and strange, and I'll probably never feel entirely human again. But I'm alive. They're alive. That's what matters." She managed a tired smile. "Besides, someone needs to be a bridge between species. Might as well be me." The journey back to Earth took 2 days at conventional speeds. Sarah spent most of that time meditating, learning to manage her new hybrid consciousness. The collective helped, teaching her how to partition her awareness, how to be Sarah when she needed to be while also maintaining connection to their shared consciousness. When they arrived, they found the entire council in emergency session. The second recording, Sarah's battle transmission showing the collective's perspective, had spread even faster than the previous ones. The galaxy had seen, through Sarah's experience, what the collective really was. Not monsters, not mindless plague. but conscious beings who'd made terrible mistakes and were trying desperately to learn from them. The debate raged for 3 days, was arrested and charged with unauthorized military action. His supporters argued that the collective could never be trusted, but they were overwhelmed by voices calling for peace, for understanding, for the kind of brave diplomacy that humanity had demonstrated. On the 4th day, the council voted. The Void Collective was officially recognized as a sovereign conscious species with full rights under council law. Military action against them was prohibited without proof of aggression. A permanent diplomatic mission would be established to facilitate ongoing communication and cultural exchange. And Sarah was appointed the first ambassador to the collective, with full authority to negotiate on behalf of both the council and the collective itself. She stood in the council chamber, listening to the announcement, feeling the collective's joy through their permanent connection. They were part of the galactic community now. They had a voice. They mattered. Ambassador said, "Your actions have fundamentally altered the political landscape of this galaxy. You've shown us that strength comes in many forms, that courage sometimes means reaching out rather than striking out, that understanding can triumph over fear if we're willing to try." He paused, his crystalline form catching the light. 3 recordings, 3 moments where you chose hope over cynicism, risk over safety, connection over isolation. Those recordings have been viewed trillions of times across council space. They've become teaching tools, inspiration, proof that there's always another way. "The war recording," Sarah said quietly. "The one that changed everything. It wasn't about showing my strength. It was about showing vulnerability. Being willing to risk everything, to change fundamentally, to pay whatever price was necessary for peace. That's not just human strength. That's the strength any species can choose." She looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. "The real question is whether you'll choose it, whether you'll apply these lessons to other conflicts, other challenges. Because there are more wars out there, more misunderstandings, more chances to choose violence or understanding. I've shown you it can be done. Now you have to decide if you'll do it yourselves." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Commander Vex stood. "I've been implementing Ambassador's methods with the rebels. We've achieved in 3 months what 700 cycles of military action couldn't accomplish. We have a peace treaty. They are remaining in the Empire voluntarily because we gave them reasons to want to stay. I propose we extend this approach to all contested territories." The representative rose next. "The Confederation has 3 ongoing territorial disputes. We propose attempting diplomatic solutions before military action. We request human advisors to assist in these negotiations." One by one, other delegates stood, proposing peace talks, requesting diplomatic assistance, offering to try a different approach. Sarah watched it happen, feeling tears on her cheeks. This was what the recordings had really changed. Not just the situation with the collective, but the entire galaxy's understanding of what strength meant. Later, much later, Sarah stood in her quarters aboard the new embassy station being built at the edge of collective space. Through the viewport, she could see collective entities moving gracefully through space, their energy forms rippling with what she now recognized as contentment. Through her permanent connection, she could feel them learning, growing, adapting to this new universe where they were part of a community rather than alone. They were teaching the council about quantum mechanics and energy manipulation. They were learning about art, music, literature, all the things that individual consciousness had created. Her communicator chimed, a message from Earth. It was from Dr. Martinez, the scientist who'd been studying extremophiles. "Ambassador, I wanted to thank you. That recording of you merging with the collective, showing that understanding was possible. It inspired me to try a new approach with the organisms I've been studying. Turns out they're not just random life forms. They're actually a distributed intelligence. I'm making first contact with them now. Using your methods, wish me luck." Sarah smiled. This was what the recordings had really accomplished. They'd shown the entire galaxy that there was always another option, that violence and warfare didn't have to be the default response. That understanding, no matter how difficult, was always worth trying. She thought about that first day in the council chamber, when everyone had looked at her and seen weakness. A small, fragile human with no natural advantages, no impressive physical capabilities, nothing that screamed strength by traditional measures. No one had known her strength then. They'd mistaken gentleness for weakness, patience for passivity, hope for naivety. But now they knew. Now they understood that the strongest thing you could do was extend a hand to an enemy. The bravest thing was to risk everything for peace. The most powerful weapon was the willingness to change. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not weapons or technology or physical prowess, but the courage to hope, the strength to be vulnerable, the power to choose understanding over fear. 3 recordings had changed everything. But it wasn't really the recordings that mattered. It was what they showed. That one person, one small human woman willing to take insane risks for peace, could reshape an entire galaxy. And if one person could do that, imagine what millions could accomplish, what billions could achieve. The collective spoke through their connection, their thoughts gentle in her mind. Thank you, Sarah, for seeing us, for helping us see ourselves, for showing both our species that understanding is possible. Thank you for trusting me, Sarah replied, for being willing to change, for choosing peace even when it was terrifying. Question, what happens now? What do humans do after changing galaxy? Sarah laughed. We find the next impossible problem and try to solve it. That's what humans do. We don't stop. We don't give up. We keep reaching out, keep trying, keep hopping. It's exhausting and terrifying and wonderful. Want to learn this? Want to be like humans, small but persistent, weak but brave, vulnerable but strong. You already are, Sarah said softly. You chose peace over pride, understanding over certainty. That's the most human thing possible. Welcome to the community, friends. Welcome to a galaxy where strength means something different than it used to. She looked out at the stars, at the vast universe full of mysteries and challenges and opportunities. Somewhere out there were more conflicts waiting to be resolved, more species waiting to be understood, more chances to prove that hope was stronger than fear. And humanity, small and fragile and persistently optimistic, would be there, reaching out, taking risks, changing the galaxy one impossible problem at a time. Because that's what humans did. No one had known their strength, but now the whole galaxy was learning. And nothing would ever be the same. The war recording had changed everything, but this was just the beginning. And wait for someone to take it. Maybe it was time to see what strength really meant.